friends. It's such a pleasure to launch this Singapore Math Gym into India, I suppose. This is the first stop in India, right, for you?
Yeah.
Okay, so very happy to be a part of this occasion, though I've come in more as a stand-in for my esteemed senior, the Deputy Chief Minister, who couldn't come today. So I was very pleasantly surprised to be here and go through this whole program, which Madam Lakshmi briefly spoke about. I think it's very timely. The idea of heuristics has always been enticing educational planners for a long time, starting from Jiddu Krishnamurthy, who created this entire model in Rishi Valley, the learning by discovery. I think it's way back, even before independence, the idea of heuristics. Heuristics in our engineering, we learned it as a method opposite to stochastic, the planning as such, with as distinct from predetermined stuff to allowing learning by discovery. So as I was going through it, my first reaction was in terms of whatever India has been going through for the last many years of our independence. There was a team which came from Singapore. Your education minister headed it, and I was the education minister at that time here. So she spent about 3 days here attempting to study different educational models in India. And I had a pleasure to interact with her. Why they did that at that time was they had some serious questions about the nature of curriculum they need to have and the pedagogy they need to have in Singapore at that point in time, because they were very confused, frankly. The idea of rote learning, which we've been beating up quite a bit, suddenly after Bill Gates made this famous statement that he prefers people who have passed through the rote learning method. There's a very famous statement he made where he said, the guys who come from the government schools here, from the traditional Indian school system, tend to perform very well in his company. One of the very interesting statements he came up with. And he also came up with some logic for it. He said, rote learning is nothing but you cram something into a child's head where the child holds it in a temporary memory and the child passes the exam. But if you allow time to assimilate what has been crammed in a certain setting, that assimilation process, then the child actually grows much better than a child who has been fed with models where it doesn't tax the brain, where you allow the child to learn by discovery and things like that. So I was very delighted to read the new education policy. I think it's a large document. Of course, in Tamil Nadu, most of us seem to have read only 2 pages, which is the pages relating to the language policy. The other 408 odd pages have not been read by most of us here. And I think half the education policy revolves around the what he calls as higher order thinking skills, the hot skills as they call. And I'm very delighted to read that Kasturi Rangan, though he's not an educationist, has gone into great depths into the learning methods in the new education policy. And personally, I think this whole dose of 75 sessions, 60 minutes each, correct? That's what you're planning to capsulate into this entire heuristics method. Yeah, really speaking, it's not mathematics alone as we understand. As I went through the whole thing, they've given a little different interpretation to mathematics, where they include the 7 higher order skills. Of course, there's the 8th one also, because you can't teach empathy without focusing on emotional intelligence. They're talking about some 10 odd skills which have been identified as the key survival skills for the years to come, done by the World Economic Forum research around the world. And I was really trying to see how to correlate what they offer with what they targeted to offer. The first thing which struck me was that they are attempting to bring in empathy as an element of teaching here. For people from HR domain who always learn to see people as a bunch of cash, K for knowledge, A for attitude, B, S for skills, and H for habits. Then I realized we are in a language trap. I think what they are trying to communicate is, in a way, skills they've broadened to include all the four: knowledge, attitude, skills, and habits. So that's the first insight when I looked at this particular thing. They've taken a model where I'm sure, coming from Singapore, it would be empirical. So they've done the empirical research, they've done whatever skills are most in demand, most critical for a child's survival in the new era. And they've attempted to put that into neat packets, capsules, and they've designed a model where it can be done within the school, it can be done outside the school, it can be done at home. Suddenly one friend of mine came the other day with another Chennai Angels application where she wanted to focus on only the home schools. There are many, she had done her research which said some thousands of mothers now want their kids to be at home and they want to be the mother and the teacher. So I was quite impressed to see a business model focused on these home, the mother teachers, so to speak. That's a very good niche which they seem to have attempted. So it's a very well drafted program, as I see. And as I really see this additional capsules or mainline school embedded capsule, that's a very interesting discussion, because when IIT JEE started getting embedded into the schools, very few of us thought it will work. But today, an entire school has branded itself as number one in Chennai, basically by the number of people they've been able to pump into IIT. Okay, and another school has now started doing it for NEET. Based on NEET now, there's a big queue, in front of the school system. So the idea of embedding any of these into the school systems seem to be catching on very well. So I think it's been very well crafted, the whole strategy of taking it to India. The only suggestion I have at this moment is, please beware of not letting it become another fad. We've had at least I can count 4 such fads in the last many years of my understanding the school system. What is that one they used, the abacus, one which lasted for a longer time was that. But unless it is backed by a good partner who sustains the entry into the Indian schools, it would be tough here to penetrate the Indian market. The schools here you will see very open to looking at something, but it need to blend in with what their objectives are. Currently with the churn which is happening in the school system, the CBSE rush which is happening currently in Tamil Nadu. At the same time, the mass versus class debate which is happening currently. If you look at the challenge for our schools here, many of the school principals are here. On one hand, if you have to survive as a commercial enterprise, you need to ensure you're 100%. You need to ensure everybody is above 60% kind of a thing. Your admissions will happen only that way. And another hand, you also need to show that so many of your people have gone and doing well. They've gone into IIT, they've gone into medical college, they've gone into this, that, which is also becoming a very key imperative today. The third imperative of giving joyful education, giving light education for children, obviously tend to take a little lesser priority currently. Your entire focus in what I saw, running thread through your modules are make it joyful, make it easy on the child, nothing is forced on the child. When in Tamil Nadu, the government, we experimented with the school in the box system of Rishi Valley about 11 years back, when that got introduced. Katral in Iniya Palli. That's a model which chose completely from Rishi Valley. The heuristic, they made that into a school in the box, and that was the first time we attempted to bring in something into the mass learning, where every school attempted to even change the furniture that we had in the schools. People sit around and learn, kind of a thing. I think it was a good experiment, in my view, to bring in a certain element of class into mass education. We've been able to, little by little, raise it now up to the 6th standard. Things have come now. Struggling with the teachers who have learned to teach in a certain manner, to bring them into this pedagogy of allowing a bit of discovery for the children has not been easy. We've been sustaining in the Tamil Nadu school education. Among all the school systems in India, you would find Tamil Nadu school education to be very receptive to any of these ideas. We've experimented with many things, in my view. And I think, I'm sure you would really understand that we have around 58,000 schools here, the Tamil Nadu school system, what we have. And among all the states in India, இந்தியாவில் இருக்கிற எல்லா மாநிலங்கள்லையும் தமிழகத்தில் தான் அதிகமாக அரசு பள்ளிகள், அரசு உதவி பெறும் பள்ளிகளில் மாணவர்கள் படிக்கிறாங்க. 58% of our school going children are in either an aided school or a government school. And it's been a place for many experiments, starting from the public-private partnership experiment, which first started in Tamil Nadu. Shri Kamaraj, Perandalavar Kamarajar, our முதல்ல கொண்டு வந்த அந்த experiment வந்து, in fact, your Singapore minister took copious notes on understanding this whole model of managing mass education with a touch of class, which is what our attempt has been. So, அந்த காலத்தில் இருந்து வேறு பில்டிங் உங்களது, அதில் இருக்கிற ஆசிரியர்கள் எங்களோடது, that's a kind of model which Kamaraj brought in. Very simple idea, but very powerful idea, which increased the enrollment in our schools to almost 65% when Kamaraj finished. And he started with some 12-13% of the enrollment. Today we are at an enrollment at the primary school of almost 99.9999%. Okay, so a very little percentage to be covered. And to move from there to the next level of college education, right now we are at a gross enrollment ratio of around almost close to 50% in this state, while in India we are still struggling with around 23-24%. So we are about twice that number of people reaching the college. So that greater focus on class education, which means looking at all the skills, looking at the way of learning, learning outcomes. These are all the lingo of the education domain as of now here in Tamil Nadu. And I think you're very timely to have come in a certain manner. And I'm very, very sure that you take it to the Tamil Nadu government. Embedding something like this is very much on the anvil. Which model to take, how holistically to take. In fact, it may be a better idea to call this truly what it is. It's much more than mathematics, what you're attempting to do, though mathematics is being used as a metaphor for describing a bouquet of skills, the 7, actually 8 skills that you add emotional intelligence. So you have actually 8 of them. And this bouquet would be a very powerful bouquet. And I've not been through how you've translated the psychometric part of it. I'm sure, coming from Singapore as it does, it would have passed through the reliability tests and the validity tests and all those stuff. I'm quite sure about it. And I'm quite sure this would be a very valuable addition to the educational mosaic in Tamil Nadu. I'm sure our private schools, the elite schools as we call, and also the government schools would find this as extremely valuable. And I'm sure through the CSR, which you have indicated as one of the important aspects, there are many companies which come to us, to the government, saying that we'll sponsor this. We are now pushing them all into the smart class. Currently the buzzword is the smart class. We are using technology basically to get the children, get a three-dimensional picture of life, which is what here we call it IRAT. IRAT is a technology which in Tamil Nadu we've been taking to the government schools now. And for that, the smart screens and the bit of technology associated with that. To my knowledge, according to Sengottayan, our health education minister, he came up with some close to 1,000 schools last year have been smartened, so to speak. You know, in the IT language, they call it smartening up a space, right? That's a recent buzzword. So in education, the equivalent is to bring in a smart school, smart classes, smart schools with the IRAT technology, with a three-dimensional picture. But I was very happy to see technology skill as an important element that you put in there. I was very impressed to see that. I never thought technology was a skill. So understanding the basics of technology, which today's kids really take it very easily. Very easily they're able to play with the smartphones and figure out a lot more commands that than what we did in our childhood, in my view. So I think looking at technology as a skill and making it a part of a mind gym or math gym is a very powerful idea. I thought I must reiterate that. இது ஒரு நல்ல முயற்சி. இந்த முயற்சி வந்து இது ஒரு கிளாஸ் and elite schools confine பண்ணிராம. I think you should really look at the mass school model. And I can trust my friend Aspire to do this. I remember his attempting to bring this preparation for competitive exam, Amma Kalvi Mayam. He converted that into a mass model at that time. It was very powerful in my view. Very timely, very powerful. And I think you probably could work with Aspire or the institution he would partner with in this particular thing to also look at the content work. You know, I'm sure you will have your rigorous this pack and no further. In India to succeed, you may like to do a lot more of content delivery model, which is appropriate to India. So what he did at that point in time, I think we had some 2 lakh people registering, some 1.8 million people registering. And personally, it meant a lot for me because at that time as an education minister, I had one important challenge of NEET. You know, the NEET, will it come, will it not come, was a question. We didn't want to come, so we were fighting in the court. But as a minister, I had a responsibility to prepare my students in case it does come. So very, underground marketing is what we needed to do. So that is where technology helped us at that time, to put that onto the website and get children to come and register and learn rather than having to go anywhere else. So I think the delivery models, you may need to discover how to take it to the mass. And there are some failed experiments you could learn from. In education itself, there are at least 5-6 failed experiments attempting to take class to the masses. I would really like you to look at them, and great initiative coming as it does from the land of Lee Kuan Yew, and who very, very strongly believed in certain educational pedagogies from the very beginning. I've always respected him and the country that he has built, and coming as it does from Singapore, let me welcome Math Gym into Tamil Nadu. May many schools take that on, and I'm very, very sure Tamil Nadu school system will be very open and receptive to taking a model like this and embedding some of the aspects. Like we've embedded chartered accountant training program. To my knowledge, no school system in India has done that. We've embedded that into the 11th standard and the 12th standard now. A basic appreciation of a chartered accountant program, we have done that. I'm sure this system is robust enough to take on something like this. You may need to be open to tuning it to the needs of our educational system, and all the very best. It's a need of the hour. New education policy may even demand that some of this gets put into the school system. And your presence here with having delivered it in some of the schools will position you very well to do that. All the very best. May each of you have a fruitful day of learning, fruitful experience of tasting something different to broaden the horizon of your students. Thank you so much.